Imagine, it's 8:57 a.m. on a Monday morning. Crap! Only 3 minutes left. You rush to the coffee machine. No stress. The week has just begun. Happy thoughts. That first sip of coffee is always so great. All right, focus. Abby just started with the financial updates. Numbers. I mean, I have 12 meetings today. Like I have time for this shit. Just send an email with the important updates. If it's just sharing information, send an email.
I can't believe your head exploded.
This story probably resonates with some of you. And here's the thing behind this train of thoughts that I just had. Behind every messy situation at work, the unclear priorities, the passive-aggressive Slack messages, the meeting that should have been an email, there's an emotion driving it. And yet, in most organizations, emotions are treated like something unprofessional, something for HR to manage, something for the fluffy types. So if you're ever sat in a meeting thinking there's something going on here that nobody is saying out loud, this is the episode for you. Welcome to the 7 People podcast. I'm Flo, and today I have 2 very special guests at the table who I think are the perfect duo to have this conversation. Trouwee is our learning and design facilitation lead at 7 People, trainer, training actor, facilitator, and someone who has a gift for making people feel things they didn't plan on feeling in a workshop. Believe me, I know. And Sanne Creusen is one of the founding partners of 7 People and someone who has been building people and culture in startups and scale-up long enough to have seen almost every emotion you can imagine in the workplace, and a few you can't. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But before we dive into this topic, what are emotions?
Nice question. Yeah, I always start with this question when I do a workshop on emotions at work. And I always ask this to the group, and then they're like, indeed, I don't know. What is an emotion?
Crying? Yeah.
But then they just name examples of what emotions are. But what the emotion is pretty hard. I'm no scientist, but an emotion is a physiological process in your body. So it's not something mental, it's just literally happening in your body. And when you allow it to be and when you process it, it only takes like 90 seconds. So this whole big thing that we're so scared of, it just takes 90 seconds if you let it, kind of exist and if you acknowledge it.
When we first discussed emotions at work, I thought, interesting topic, emotions at work. What does it mean to me? Personally, I thought immediately, oh God, no, somebody crying at HR.
The big ones, right?
The big ones, yeah. And now I had this whole train of thought, and then we see that emotions are so much more than just crying, right? Mm-hmm. It's also joy.
Yeah, and also very subtle things like, oh, I got a pay raise, I'm happy. Like those things we don't really think about when we think of emotions because they're accepted emotions.
Mm-hmm. Is there like a thing that pops in your mind when we talk about emotions at work, like a story that you can share with our listeners when you actually experienced emotions at work?
Yeah, I've had many times your experience actually of meetings that you are pulled into every week, especially the recurring ones, and you feel like they don't make any sense. And you can also sense that other people feel that. So it's like a group of people together at the same place, same time, but they're all kind of tuned out. And we all know that the energy is draining. So that is something I really recognize. But also like the big joy when you close a deal or when you have a new client, like in our case, like that's also things that are every day at your workplace. There's so many emotions every day that you go through. Whether you notice them or not, they're there.
Yeah. And for you?
There was this certain meeting that was recurring, but it was like once in a quarter, I think. And that meeting was always about the amount of hours that you were supposed to spend on a certain project.
Oh.
But every meeting we talked about the amount of hours we had, and we were kind of venting and talking about the fact that we didn't have enough hours for the project. And every meeting it was the same. And then when I knew I was going to wrap up my work at this company, I figured, what if I mention what I've been experiencing? Because I was frustrated. That's the emotion behind it, right? So I was there and I figured, okay, there's nothing at stake because I'm not going to be here anymore. And I actually want to give them the gift of this reflection that I had with the frustration behind it for me. So sharing them, this is what I've experienced. So we are talking about numbers every single time and nothing comes out of it. And the joke is I had no clue who these people were in the meeting room. And I use that as an example, setting like, I don't even know you. Why are we in this meeting? So the intention of that meeting was not clear. And that made it frustrating to me. And also because we were talking about amount of hours that we didn't have, but we did spend a lot of hours on talking about hours. So frustration, but it was a good relief afterwards when I said it. So I think that's also interesting about having emotions at work, that we talk about going in with, for example, frustration or stress. But if we do mention the emotion we have behind it, it also is a relief, right? So that's also the other emotion that creates talking about the emotion.
A positive emotion. Personally, when I, for example, have these train of thoughts, I do want to vent my emotion in the one hand, but on the other hand, I always also feel that then I immediately also need to come with a solution. So that is also the first thing that I thought with your example. I thought, okay, yeah, great that you feel this way. So, what's the solution here? But is it actually the right thing to think like that? I'm not sure.
Often just naming it is already the solution. So the follow-up is not needed.
No?
Not always. Sometimes you just need to say, I was very frustrated at that meeting, and just acknowledge that for yourself that that's the case. And many times it already kind of softens then. But then also investigate afterwards, what's the need behind that? So what makes me feel frustrated, and what do I want to feel, and what do I need to do to feel what I want to feel? And then maybe share that and express that like you did in your example. That's what you can do. That's within your control, right?
Yeah, definitely. But still, I think, it's difficult to talk about emotions at work. It feels like a me problem. And why would I burden anybody with that? So why is it so difficult?
Well, I guess because we never learned this in school. We never learned, at least I didn't, and most of the people that I surround myself with never learned how to name your emotion, recognize them even, and also when you see them in others, to name them, to like point it out. So the elephant in the room we often talk about, we don't address it, and it's costing us a lot of things. It's costing us time and energy and relationships.
Because it's about acknowledging who you are in a certain situation.
Yeah.
It's about learning how to decode what these emotions are. And I think in the example that I gave of the situation that I was in, I did have to think about the fact first, if I'm going to say this, what again is my intention here? Because you can mention, I'm frustrated, and then what? That's exactly what you said, right? So I was thinking before saying it. And I think that's the thing. You don't have to get emotional to talk about emotions. No. So here, you're acknowledging your emotion, then you're letting it go a little bit. So you become in a place where you can be more of vocal about the situation, because you're not acting out your emotion. You're letting it go. And then you're mentioning, okay, so this made me feel this way, and this is what I need from you. So there is a call to action after that. And before you know how to phrase that, you have to think about what is the intention of why I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
Similar to what is the intention of having a meeting where you will have 12 other meetings and where you will be frustrated because you could have done it in an email.
Yeah.
So we have to think from intentions.
Yeah.
Yes. So, okay, let me read to you something out of the book from Liz and Molly. Great book, No Hard Feelings. In a lab experiment, people who reported feeling the strongest emotions, good or bad, at the moment of decision, made the best investment choices. So emphasizing that fact of the CEO, right? So CEOs have emotions because they make good decisions.
Sometimes.
Even if they didn't always follow their gut. So also talking about the gut, right? So the science behind it. So instead, they considered their emotions, thought hard about which ones might be informative, and then regulated the rest. Put differently, paying attention to all your emotions and feelings allows you to control them instead of the other way around. So it's eventually about recognizing that listening to your feelings is not the same as acting on your feelings. Just to really emphasize that fact that it's really, becoming aware of it, right?
Yeah. So don't get emotional about your emotions.
Yeah, the difference between reacting and response, it's a huge difference. And we don't always make that distinguishment.
So really be intentional and not just experience things without naming it or, okay.
And we can try to act like we don't bring our emotions into work. And there's also cultures where the norm is, no, we don't talk about how we feel. We don't express emotions here at the workplace.
Yeah.
That could be your culture. But we can act as much as we want like they're not there, but they are there. We have an emotional culture at work, whether you like it or not. And it's better to kind of codify indeed and analyze what your emotional culture is than to just ignore it because it's there anyways.
Yeah.
Just like organizational culture in general, of which emotional culture is a part, either an organization makes an effort to make their organizational culture explicit, or they don't, but it's there anyways, right? That's what you know as well as an HR person. Why is that interesting? And that's from Stanford University. They did a huge study where they studied that if I am frustrated and I'm in the same room as you, but I don't talk about it, I bottle it up, so I don't show. Your blood pressure goes up.
Really?
Yes. Even if you don't see or consciously realize that I'm frustrated. So you might not notice that I'm frustrated right now, but your body notices and your blood...
You feel it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Your blood pressure goes up, which means that's unhealthy, right? So whether we talk about it or not, it's there anyways. So let's better talk about it
And
so
deal
we
with
can
it, yeah.
lower that blood pressure. Yeah.
But still, gonna be a bit of the advocate of the devil here.
Nice.
Still, I do then hear like the typical founder say, emotions, we don't do that. That is not professional, you know, because probably they also think about the, I don't know, hysterical crying person when we say emotions at work. I mean, so that is his perception of being professional, right? So I'm curious to hear from you, like, what is your perception of what professionalism looks like?
And just listening to how you were mimicking this CEO, right? Is that, but we don't have emotions and it's not professional. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's because there's emotions behind it. So if a CEO would already respond in this kind of way, but in that kind of manner, you could ask, I'm curious to understand what kind of emotion is happening right now. And then maybe not labeling it as emotions because that's something triggering in this situation. But there's already something happening. So the question there is, okay, so what do you understand then when it comes to professional behavior? What is that? And then try to see within that conversation how you can link it to it being an emotion, because it's about behavior. But in order to behave, there is a driver, and that is always emotion.
That is always emotion. And it starts then with your own emotions, kind of, you said it, decoding, or what was the word again? So you mean decoding. Then, what do you mean exactly? Like you label them, or?
Yeah, you're kind of investigating like what's going on here, and then try to label them indeed. So there, what's also helpful is to expand your vocabulary a little bit.
Yeah.
So you have this thing called the wheel of emotions, for example, and it shows all the different types of emotions that are there. And it sounds maybe a bit childish. And I know some people use it also for their children to help them learn to talk about emotions. But it works for adults too. I've used this multiple times in workshops, and I've shown it to the group, this wheel, and they're like, whoa, I didn't even know there were words for this, and I don't even know what it means. But helping people build that vocabulary absolutely works.
Yeah.
It's called emotional granularity. So when you're able to say, I'm not angry, but I'm frustrated, that you can make the difference and the distinction for yourself. People that are able to do that, they are less stressed, and they can better perform at work because they put a name to it. Apparently that's super helpful in processing.
And also it is really helpful if you are an HR business partner, because then you can also recognize it in that, for example, CEO what we just talked about. Because if you know it from yourself and you can label it, you can also see it in others, I think, right?
Absolutely. And this podcast is for HR people, right? Or at least most of our listeners will be working in HR. So if you also want to know, like, what can I do here? You're probably going to be the one in your organization that has a higher sense, like a higher sense of empathy. You sense what's going on a bit faster. That's a bit generalizing, but most HR people are quite emotionally intelligent, right? So then it's also your job to help other people build that emotional language. So if you see something in a person, name it. And then in that way, you're kind of growing the organization to help them have that language. And also coach your leaders, challenge them a little bit. Like, I'm sensing this, is that correct? And help them try to do the same.
Not freeze, because personally, I think that is what happens now quite a lot, or also for myself. Sometimes when somebody is very emotional or, for example, frustrated, I see the frustration, I can feel the frustration, but personally, I then kind of like freeze and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do. So any tips on how to get through that?
Definitely. Well, it starts with the fact that you already have this reflection that this is what's happening to you. So that's step one.
Yeah.
All right. It's like going to the gym. If you go once to the gym, you're not buff yet, or whatever goal you have in the gym. If it's going to be buff, go for it. But so you have to train yourself. So then next time you would maybe think, oh, okay, I might freeze when this is happening. Okay, so that's already a next step that you said have in that situation, because you acknowledge the fact that you're freezing and you knew it was going to happen. So you're building to those different kinds of steps. And the next step could be, okay, in this situation, I want to say something. Step 3, step 4, in the next situation, you're going to say something, right? I mean, don't expect yourself to already do all the things that you wish you could have done.
No.
So just baby steps.
Baby steps. And then start with a sentence like, hey, I'm sensing something here. Do you have to always call out what you're sensing? Or is it also like safe to keep that a bit in the middle, but just pointing out, hey, I'm sensing something?
Yeah, you could do that. If you're also unsure, you could say like, I don't know what's going on here, but something is off.
Yeah.
You could say something like that.
Just
and
call
then
it out.
You're calling it out, and then people are very inclined to start talking themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can stay true to yourself, right? Because if it's scary to focus on the other, and we always believe that it's good to start with yourself, right? But you could just mention, I feel uncomfortable in this situation. Like, for example, I once had a session where I was presenting and giving a very, very personal presentation on myself. And I was so nervous, and I used that in my storytelling, and I showed them like I was so nervous that I was shaking and stuff. And then when the talk was done, I was super happy and proud of myself. And then this person just walked up to me, and he started talking about the fact, I think you never received feedback in your life. And I think that women your age always talk way too fast, and they use certain grammar that's incorrect, and blah, 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 blah. And I froze. But for some reason, I knew for myself in these situations, when I freeze, something's off. And I was able to tell him, I feel super uncomfortable right now.
Yeah.
And I looked him in the eyes, and this is a strategy we always invite people to do in our sessions, is to work on the power of silence. So I mentioned, I feel really uncomfortable right now. Silence. And he looked at me, and then he became uncomfortable. So I was actually giving him the emotion that I had in that certain moment, because it was not okay. And then he just started like, I don't know what he was doing. And then he just said, okay. He walked off.
You walked off.
And then I started crying, obviously, because I was frozen. And then I was able to feel the feelings that I was feeling. But, these are just the baby steps, getting there and mentioning it, and then silence. Stick to that silence.
Yeah.
To give you another tip on it.
But very empowering, because so many times I also froze. And then afterwards I was like, oh, I should have said this or that or why and half. And then the frustration only builds up.
Yeah.
And when you only say, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, you kind of can deflate in a way a bit, I think, as well, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, and sometimes in some organizations it's not kind of accepted to talk about like, I feel this or I feel that. So imagine that you're working for this Miranda Priestley.
Devil wears Prada.
I'm so sorry, Miranda. I actually did confirm last
Details of
night.
your incompetence do not interest me.
So imagine you work for Miranda, and she really doesn't give a damn about you saying, I feel hurt, or I feel frustrated. She doesn't want to hear that. So it's possible that you work in an environment like that, right? So you can tie your emotions to some sort of organizational language that is accepted. So talk connected to a business goal, for example. So you could say, instead of, I feel hurt by the way these meetings go, you could say, I'd like us to find a way to make this more efficient this quarter. I oftentimes get a bit frustrated when we leave these meetings. I can imagine you sometimes have that as well. Can we talk about how we can design a better process, for example? And then you wrap it in language that is accepted within the org while you're still addressing the elephant in the room. So that's sometimes helpful maybe for some people.
Yeah. It's really emphasizing what you're saying is that we have to learn each other's languages here.
Yeah.
And we hear a lot from organizations that they're like, oh, well, I can't learn all those like 300 different languages from my employees. No, but at least try. And what you have to learn there is that you have to speak from levels of emotions. And this is a quote by Simon Sinek. Emotions meet emotions and facts meet facts. So if you're speaking an emotion, that's where you can meet each other. And once that's, you were talking about like deflating a little bit, breathing and being able to let go of that high emotion, then that's when you can talk about facts. So what you're saying, Sanne, that's when you can talk about processes, for example. But really see where the level you're at in that conversation to see, okay, are we talking emotions still or we're ready for the facts?
Yeah, because if you're very emotional, you cannot hear you cannot talk reason, right? That's also what we learn in HR when you, for example, have to have a difficult conversation, when you, for example, have to fire somebody and you have to tell the news. I've learned from the both of you actually that's the worst when you tell like the bad news and people are very high in their emotion, then immediately also start talking facts because
they're not hearing you, right?
They will not hear you, yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of workshops recently on how to navigate change as a leader. And we've all been in situations where there was change within an organization. And what we oftentimes see going wrong is that leadership has been busy with this change for a long time. They prepared it, they prepared the strategy, they prepared a comms plan, and now we're going to share the change. So they're sharing the change. This and this is going to happen, blah, 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 blah. Thank you, goodbye, there will be some meetings.
Yeah.
And then they kind of expect people to be on board with the change, while the other people are just hearing the news. Well, you have been busy with this for months. So there's a disconnect between where they are and where their people are at, because the people are still in their emotions because they just heard the news. They just heard, some people are going to get laid off. That's news to them. So they're high in their emotions. Then you can talk about rationale all you want, but it's not going to land.
No.
So that's indeed where we always use this emotion meets emotions, facts meets facts.
And is that also, because now at the beginning we talked mainly about your own emotions, how you can express them, etc. But as an HR business partner, or when you work in HR, sometimes you also feel or sense certain dynamics in certain teams, right? So maybe the example that we just had about the meeting, sometimes, or maybe you recognize it when you give a workshop, you feel the energy dropping, people are gonna lean back a bit, everybody's kind of disconnecting. I think that's also an emotion. Mm-hmm. How can you handle that in a group?
Ooh, love that question. That's our work. Well, I mean, also to relate it back to your question, when we're talking about emotions and what is being professional, I think it's being professional if you acknowledge emotions, and especially in team dynamics, because you need emotions to occur. So if we're talking about Tuckman, for example, going through the different steps of becoming a high-performing team or a performing team. You have to go through chaos or storming in the model that he has created. You need that. And in storming, literally what's happening is all types of emotions and friction. You need it in order to go to the next step, going towards performing. So if you're talking about how to help a team and emotions, it's about knowing which emotions you have in your room. So we call that when designing for sessions, for example, is a meeting where your team or your group or your participants are at. So that could be either the level of experience or the level of understanding of a topic, but also the emotions. I mean, just a simple example could be if you're hosting a session on Monday morning at 8 a.m., people will come in with a different type of emotion compared to Friday at 4. No, these are the exact two timings that we usually don't want trainings.
So do it with intention again. Intention, the magic word.
Yeah, remember, Flo, when we did the training on absenteeism for that client, and it was a mandatory training, and the first thing we said was, I can imagine that you didn't walk into the office this morning thinking, oh my God, I am so excited for this training about the Dutch absenteeism system. That's not what they were excited for, because why would you be excited about this topic, right? As a manager, it's not why you become a manager for. So to acknowledge that, to think about their experience beforehand, that helps a lot. And now these are examples from doing workshops, but you can do that as an HR person, of course, as well. And in all hands that you present, in meetings that you facilitate, think about what could they be going through, my audience, and acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And
also,
if you're sensing something in the room, say it.
Yeah, because that was, I thought, very strong. Because at some point, we also noticed people were a bit like, it got a bit hot. And you said, hey, I feel that the energy is a bit dropping. Let's take a 10-minute break. And then I thought, yes, I actually also need one. Thank you.
yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, that's allowed, people.
Yeah.
You have to have empathy, I think, right? A bit to...
Yeah, and some people have a talent for it, I'd say, to sense that a bit more naturally, but you can also train for that, right?
Yeah.
And we all have a gut feeling. Everyone has that. And it takes a bit of training to start to recognize it and to listen to it and to act to it. We work with Clifton Strengths at 7 People, right? Mm-hmm. And one of my strengths is empathy. And in the report, they talk about your call to action, kind of, what should you do with this strength? And it says, if you have the empathy strength, you're sensing more than other people. So it's your responsibility to call it out if something is going on. And I really learned from that, because I oftentimes indeed sense stuff, like in a group setting, the dynamics is off. And then I don't say anything because I kind of assume that everyone feels that. Mm-hmm. That's not true. So starting to call that out, then you can really benefit from that superpower that you have and help the group forward. Mm-hmm. So indeed, going back to your point, that is being professional, right? Yeah. Because you're helping the team forward by calling it out.
And also, I think you're comfortable with the uncomfortable. Yeah. Because sometimes it is easier to stay quiet and just observe. And it is uncomfortable maybe to call it out, right? So that is also, I think, the muscle that you need to train.
Yeah, so it's about calling it out. And I think that what we also see a lot happening, again, in sessions, but also in any type of meeting or work that you do, is that we work on assumptions.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. We are working on assumptions. And where did our skill to ask, where did it go? We left it somewhere behind the door. I don't know where, but
so true.
That's also something we should learn, because in every session that we do, we, for example, even when doing a delegation brief, for example, we have a session on delegation and prioritization. We let them write a delegation brief for someone that they want to delegate to. And obviously it's a one-way route, right? Because you're writing it out and it should be a conversation. So if you ask them like, okay, so what do you think they would need if it becomes to coaching or guiding or whatever, they would think, I think. That's what they say. I think. There's a cue for a lot of things that we say, I think. But then if you would really ask them, but do you know? They'll be like, no, because they never asked. So if we're talking about, again, emotions here and what is professionalism, it is being clear on who are we, what do we need, what do we decide on, and don't build on assumptions.
Clear is kind. Then it wouldn't be the 7 People podcast if we wouldn't make this proudly pragmatic at the end. I'm a HR person, professional at a nice company. And I listen to this podcast. I'm like, ooh, yeah, we don't really have an emotional culture yet at where I work. How can this person then start kind of building that? What is the first step that they can take?
Well, first of all, every company has an emotional culture.
True.
Right?
We just talked about that.
Yeah, so whether you realize it or not, it's already there. It's about the cultural norms that you have around emotions. So yes, we find happiness okay, we find pride okay, but anger and sadness, you can do that in the bathroom.
No, we have to feel good all the time.
Yes, we have to feel good. That's what we often see, right, in organizations. The happy feelings are good. Not so happy feelings, you can take them home. Mm-hmm. I think it starts for an HR person to learn what the current situation is. And to, when you found out about the current situation, through surveys or conversation, then ask yourself, does this match our values? Because emotions, they come like the weather, right? Like we have 1,000 emotions a day, but our values, personal values, but also company values, they are solid. So you kind of have to match, like, hey, is the way we look at emotions at this workplace, is that the same as our values? For example, if it's not okay to show or express the bad feelings, but we say in our values, you can come as you are, we are open, then there's a mismatch, right? So assess, does that make sense to us? The answer could be yes, but at least make the assessment. That's absolutely a tip I have.
Yeah, so and to build on that, it's also about the behavior. So if you're working on values, as the example from Sanne, that you also write out, okay, what kind of behavior do we want to see, but also understand what kind of behavior don't we want to see?
No.
Yeah.
Because that's eventually what's going to drive this culture.
Yeah, and it is also quite nice because I think when you write it down as a company and you come to this agreement as a company, and I don't know, you have to have a difficult conversation with a person that didn't show the right behavior. It's not me as a manager that thinks this, but it is us as an organization that do not accept this. And that makes it so less personal and so, also a bit easier than to talk about it, because it's not me personally thinking you did something bad. No, this is not the behavior that we as a company tolerate.
Yeah.
And I think that is also really helpful if you write it down.
Yeah. And also acknowledge that people have personal lives. I think that we can do as HR, we can kind of role model that. For example, if you've got the message that someone is going through a really rough time personally at home, something is going on, or maybe going through a divorce or something.
Yeah.
You could say something to their team like, hey, Simo is going through a really rough time right now. He's really throwing himself into work. He prefers not to have small talk. Like let him be for a bit. To just acknowledge that people have personal lives, that already acknowledges that we are human. We have other things on our mind than work. So that already builds, I guess, on that emotional culture. But also simple things like, that was a real cool example from the book, again, No Hard Feelings, that a study from like a Cornell professor, he said that sharing meals or coffee breaks together, that makes a huge difference in team success. And why is that? Because sharing meals together has like they wrote, long primal tradition of social glue. So when we eat together, we tend to like each other more. And we tend to like be more open to each other. So I thought that was super cool, because indeed we might recognize when you have lunch together or go out for a drink together or have a coffee together, you talk about different stuff than you do when you're sitting in a meeting room. Such a simple thing. So that's a cool thing for HR to realize.
Yeah, so don't underestimate the power of having that as a secondary benefit, right? Just those things are big. So invest in that.
Yeah.
Never knew that. And it's so easy to implement this tomorrow.
Yeah. And then still we will have people that listen to this and think, I've got a business to run.
Yeah.
Why do we even talk about this when really people have a bullshit radar for people not being authentic and people not being their real selves. And when we feel that someone is not being honest about what's going on, we tend to dislike them and distrust them more. So especially or also for our leaders, you can act like nothing is going on and you're completely fine and you're not bothered by the sleepless nights of your newborn twins, for example. You can act like nothing is going on, but people, especially your team members, will feel that something is going on and they will project it on themselves. They think, oh, he's being grumpy. That's because of me. I did something wrong. Stress levels go up. Productivity goes down. So it's, to me, it sounds so obvious, but we have to kind of get away from thinking about emotions and emotional culture as something like fluffy indeed, and we're all crying at the office and handing out tissues to each other. It's kind of hard business, right?
Yeah.
And we hope that like the examples we shared and the studies we shared also gave the HR people listening some helpful tools to have that conversation within their organization.
To dare the leaders to name
Challenge
the
them.
elephant. Yeah, to challenge them to name the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And be, again, comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then again, if there is a response which you sense there's an emotion behind it because someone else thinks it's fluffy, well, there's something behind it. So always try to understand what's the emotion behind the emotion, and really, making that become something that's on the surface, because you're also helping them to understand themselves better.
Yeah, and the whole why did we come up with this topic to even talk about, and why are we the people talking about that? It's because in the past few months we've done about 4 sessions, workshops or trainings a week with about 12 participants per session. So that's like hundreds of people that we've seen on different topics, from absenteeism to delegation to navigating change, feedback conversations, that kind of stuff. But every time where it really gets tricky for participants and where really the pain point is, it's always about this being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the joke is, every time we have a difficult conversation and we're doing a case, so me as a training actor, the most difficult situation is the one when someone's crying. Yeah. So maybe the circles around then again. Yeah. Apparently that's the most difficult situation for them. So apparently if we think about emotions at work, the ones that we find the most difficult is the one we laugh hardest about.
Yeah.
And I love it because I love to cry. Let's cry. Let's try it out.
So if I'm listening to this podcast and I come to the office on Monday morning, what is like a little challenge that you can give them, a thing that they can start doing tomorrow?
So first thing is a challenge for yourself. So that is to train your emotional agility. That's a term by Susan David. I don't think we talked about it yet, but we have named it before. So first of all, notice your emotion in yourself. What's going on here? Then try to label it, put a name to it. Is it frustration? Is it anger? Whatever. Take the wheel of emotions and practice a little bit with that. Then third, understand the needs behind your emotion. I'm feeling frustrated right now, but I want to feel relaxed. What do I need to feel relaxed? Mm-hmm. And then fourth, express your needs to the people around you. So I need this from you to make us go forward. I don't know. So these 4 steps is something for yourself, and then specifically for HR people, start listening more to the gut feeling that you have when you're in a group dynamic, and start to call it out. So, and that's a nice quote that we sometimes use in our trainings as well, from Shelley Johnson. If you don't follow her yet on LinkedIn, please do so. She is a really nice leadership coach. And she once wrote, "Better sad and awkward than unsaid and tense." And I think that's a beautiful quote to leave you with, to really practice with that elephant in the room. And it might not come out perfectly in the first time, and people might be a bit shocked by you pointing it out. But by doing so, you really open up conversations and you really help teams move forward. So yeah, I really encourage the listeners to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much to both of you for this really eye-opening conversation. It was really eye-opening for me, because I just experienced emotions and I didn't even kind of know sometimes what they were. But because of this conversation and the prep with the podcast, I've actually learned a lot about myself. So I really want to thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We will share all the frameworks, the books, the researches we talked about in the speaker notes. And of course, thank you Personio for sponsoring this one. See you next time.